Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Don't Be a Man About It. Today, my guest has a new definition of what therapy is, and I love what he does. I admire his work, and I admire his perception and definitions of what therapy is all about. So I'll let him introduce himself. Thank you, Robert, for accepting my invitation to be here. Hi.
Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to join your audience.
So much. So before we start the episode, I would like to give you the honor to just introduce yourself for those who don't know you.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Robert Grigore. I am a certified EMDR therapist, an approved EMDR consultant. I speak and I am the published author of the book You Need Therapy. Surprise, surprise. And that's for EMDR, real people with real problems getting real help.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. So before we start, there's one question that I always ask my guests. How is your heart doing today?
Oh, my heart. That's a great question. My heart feels full and it's in a good place. I'm happy to be sharing some really important messages with you today. So that definitely fills my heart.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's start with why did you come up with the mission, or why is your mission to redefine what therapy is? Why is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really because my whole life I've had up until fairly recently, my whole life I've had the idea that therapy was this long, drawn out process, that was made popular by Freud and Carl Jung and Irving Yalom, all the icons that I looked up to and followed. So I had this idea that therapy was, several years, sometimes decades. I had sort of fantasized about the times when maybe I'd be invited to a client's, child wedding or something, and I'd sort of be this fixture in their family for decades, and it just that brought me a sense of excitement. But then reality set in when I was working in the field and I started working with male survivors of sexual abuse with the society here in British Columbia, where I'm located, called the BC Society of Male Survivors with for male survivors with sexual abuse, and that was a great entry point into therapy because I call it, I started in the deep end, really, with some major trauma with people that they were struggling with. And the process of therapy, talking every day, 60 minutes, 90 minutes per week, for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, started to really weigh on me. And while I loved my clients and they obviously they got benefit out of the treatment, otherwise they wouldn't keep coming back. So just creating this space was nice, and they got to share some things, get them off their chest, and sometimes share things that they've never shared ever before.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the big but is their treatment didn't really go anywhere. They were still struggling with the same issues. They were still having these particular ailments and following the same patterns of self-sabotage. And so I knew that I had to do something different and get these men into a different type of treatment, which became EMDR. And so the big mission is when I want people to think about EMDR as a faster route for their healing, that it doesn't need to take you years and decades. In fact, with the way that I work, we're talking you could eliminate your issue in as little as a single weekend. And that is huge for people when they think about, having struggled sometimes with the same issues and the same inner torment, the prisons that they're within them, that they're inside for decades. And, that doesn't have to be therapy. So that's really the mission. The mission is to help people understand that therapy doesn't have to be a life sentence.
I love your choice of words. You just um, present life of sentence. It's really amazing. I think it's great to change and redefine the definition of therapy is really great because a lot of people have misconceptions or they still have this image in their minds that therapist is just laying on the couch, talking your heart out and getting out of it just paid money for nothing. They still do not know the difference between a therapist, a psychiatrist, a coach. What does this person does for me, and what does this person does for me? I don't want to do it, and then they end
Mm,
up just piling up all of their emotions, all of their struggles, trying to
yeah.
distract themselves with really harmful, let's say, behaviors. How could you, or how, in your expertise, do you see the difference now when they are more aware of your way of doing therapy, especially with men, let's say middle-aged men? Are they more open to come to a therapist right now? Are they more open to actually admit that they need help?
So are the men that I'm seeing, are they more likely to admit that they
Like
need
before
help? Are
and
they
after, before or during your program?
so I would say that for the most part, the men that come to see me, probably like 80% of them are actually coming because their wives or children are encouraging them to come in, even today. And I would think that because I'm a man, maybe that would be a little bit easier for men to open up. But I will also say that things are shifting, and it's really about, I believe it's really about the message. If the men that I work with, just to clarify who I work with nowadays, so we're not talking all men, but I work with top creative professionals. So they could be athletes or celebrity actors. They could be um, CEOs, entrepreneurs, small business people. Even I've had a range of different people, even coaches come to see me, other therapists come to see me. Um, but the people that I tend to work with are busy, and that's really one of the key problems that I've seen for a lot of men to come to work is, do they have 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, even 3 months to commit to coming to see a therapist every single week, 60 minutes, 90 minutes? And that's a big barrier because there's I've been seeing my own therapist now. Well, I've seen a whole bunch of different therapists over the
I
years, just
can
to be clear.
imagine.
But my most recent therapist that I've been seeing lately is an EMDR therapist as well. And it's like, it's been 4 weeks, 4 sessions, I should say. And I'm still waiting to kind of get into what I wanted to get into. So it's, I think different therapists will work differently. And so it's really important to find the right therapist. But the messaging out there has to be that treatment can go really quickly if you find the right avenue. And that's a big, you raise the problem as well as, how do I know which is the right avenue? You've got psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, coaches, social workers, and you get so much information that you kind of just give up on it. You just you know move on to something else, stuff it down. And that's one of the narratives that men have been struggling with, women to some degree. But I've definitely seen the very classic stiff upper lip man, that sort of stoic strong man, quote unquote, right?
Mm,
If I don't talk about my
very tough.
feelings, it means that I'm strong, right? And it's there's a lot of, really what's going on underneath of that is, yes, there's a cultural tendency where people are taught, conditioned very early on in age that boys don't cry and it's okay for girls to cry. And right from that very early message, we get taught these different narratives that really start to dictate how we manage our emotions. And when it really comes down to it, it doesn't matter what gender you are, you have feelings, and those feelings have to be expressed. So, we can definitely really get into the narrative there, but, the part of the issue is breaking down and redefining what it means for a man to open up with his feelings and share that and be vulnerable with another person. Because, by golly, it is not a sign of weakness to do this. In fact, this is the most responsible and courageous thing that a man can do, is to actually look inside. It's like having a gorgeous, sports car, and, under the hood you hear a rattling, but you're like, no, I'm not going to look at that. I'm just going to forget about it, because I don't want to open up the hood and then I have to do this and I have to do that, and then it's going to cost me this, and I don't want, like, it's just better just to forget about it, just pretend it's not there, and then hopefully at one point, most guys, women too, of course, but the show's about guys, so most guys are going to want, with their car, they're going to take that seriously, and they're going to make sure that it's running properly. This, our mental health is the same way. You have to look under the hood. You have to make sure that everything's, functioning the way you want it to.
Thank you so much for saying and mentioning that. The thing is, mental health is not gender biased. It's not picky when it comes to, all right, today my name is depression, and today I'm just gonna go to visit some woman. It doesn't do that. The reason why I am fully focused and passionate to raise awareness on men's mental health is because of all the things that you just said, that they are raised from a very young age that boys don't cry, boys are the ones who will provide for the house, boys are the responsible ones, boys are the tough ones. And even when he's doing any activity, like a physical activity, let's say boxing, stop hitting or punching like a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that would create men who are either unemotional, emotionally unavailable, or they have been holding their traumas and all of the baggage, the emotional baggage, and they grow up to be an adult who don't know how to cry, who don't know how to express himself, and it comes like anger or a heart attack or
Mm-hmm.
workaholics, or then, God forbid, suicide, which is the
Yeah.
way how I lost my dad. So how much do you put emphasis, or when you are working with men, how long does it take for them to actually really open up and do something about it? Because I think it's not what you know anymore, it's what you do with what you know. So what would you say on that?
you know you're so right in everything that you've said, and um, I also want to express again my condolences for your father, and that, having lost, and that's an important point that we should circle back on too, because
Yes.
when a man doesn't take his mental health seriously and something really bad like that happens, it affects more than just him. So let's circle back to that a little bit. Um, Before, but so the question, how do I help men to open up, and what's that process like, right, in therapy? um you know it kind of depends. It depends on how much that individual has
Yes.
worked on themselves previously. If this is the first time, like they've never even heard of the word therapy before, they're in my office, it's probably going to be a little bit of a journey. Again, I work differently than other people, so it's a quicker journey, but it's definitely the process of becoming self-aware. We have to, it could start in just very, when people have suppressed their awareness of their emotions are felt in the body.
Yeah, true.
And that's when you're talking about anxiety, and then you're talking about a heart attack. You're talking about the body reacting in such a way that you can't ignore it anymore. So it might start like that, like, hey, so what are you feeling? And, John says, I don't know. I'm just feeling bad. Okay. Well, tell me about that a little bit more. How are you feeling bad? And you'll hear this a lot of times. I don't know. I'm feeling bad. And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, don't worry about the words. Tell me about your body. Where are you feeling something in your body? And if we can go this angle, oh, I'm feeling it in my stomach. Okay, you're feeling it in your stomach. What does that feel like in your stomach? And is it positive, negative, or neutral? Oh, it's negative. Okay, great. And then we can work with that. Does it feel like there's a temperature to it? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it feel like it's moving at all? And we can talk about it and visualize it like there's a ball or something like that in your stomach, and you feel like there's it's moving, or there's spikes on it or something. And we can go that route if the person's creative, and visual. But really, the body, physiologically speaking, the body responds to what's going on in the mind. It doesn't come out of nowhere. The brain is sending signals to the body to react in this particular way. And we say that trauma is stored in the body. It doesn't matter who you are, it's there somewhere in the body. But it depends if that individual has disconnected or dissociated themselves from their feelings their whole lives. If this is the narrative that they were taught, don't feel your feelings, don't feel right. And when I was working with the male survivors of sexual abuse in the agency, one of the main things that was taught to me in my early on in my practicum was that men are taught, to feel like three different things that are safe for us to feel. You can feel happiness, you can feel, desire, like a sexual desire, and you can feel rage, anger and rage. And you can't feel sadness. You can't feel, there's a giant spectrum of things that we can feel, but we're only allowed these, three avenues. It's a huge disservice, and it does put people back. If you want to look at it like a race, it's not really a race, but you're starting way back there, and you need to go faster. So some simple steps to create awareness. Check into your, what are you feeling in your body? Does it have a temperature? Does it have a weight to it? Does it move? That's important. Do you feel like your heart's pounding? Right? Are you noticing that you're suddenly dry mouth? You don't have any saliva in your mouth. These are all signs of anxiety. And, we can work on them very physiologically if we need to, but we can also work on what that means about you to feel that way. Or when we're talking about a feeling that's disconnected or dissociated from the body, meaning that the person's not able to really recognize it or doesn't want to recognize it for some reason, there is a fear underlying that. And the fear is multi-layered. We're talking, first, it's probably, I'm afraid that if I feel this, I'm going to fall apart, and then I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. If I'm the prototypical provider of the family, then if I show up to work and let's say that I'm a manager at my job. I don't want my CEO to look at me and my supervisor to look at me and think that I'm not doing a good job. And so I don't want this to, the fear is of losing control. The fear is of being judged and criticized, and then ultimately abandoned, right? Excommunicated in some way from your security. And we can go all the way back to where I think this really starts from in our evolution. So it's a huge issue, but for that particular individual, it all starts in the original family, the origin of the issue, mom and dad, and then we're going back even further to that. What about mom and dad's parents and their parents' parents and so on? So we're talking, this is generational. I call it the psychological legacy of my clients, the culture that they were passed down from generation to generation. There's the cultural context of, where in the world is that person, the geographical culture. And then there's the familial culture where, how did your parents respond to emotions and feelings or not?
And wow, okay.
There's a lot there. Sorry.
Like, when you're talking, I was like, ask him this, ask him this, ask him this. So So you mentioned something about the generations, and I totally believe in this. And I genuinely believe that if our parents and their parents were really educated on mental health and the well-being, they would have saved a lot of therapy on us and a lot of emotional pain. So, in your opinion, how easy is it to break the pattern through the generations? So now we are more aware that mental health is an issue, and it is the pandemic, not the corona. It is mental health is
Hmm.
the pandemic. And it's because a lot of people are now more aware of how dangerous that is. Do you think now we are the generation who broke that stigma? So our
I
kids and their kids will be healthier?
I think that it's a work in progress. I
Yeah.
think that it's there we've come a long way now to I mean, here your podcast is a great example of that. Here you are, a woman with a podcast about men's mental health, and your efforts right now to help change the how people view mental health. And if you reach 5 men, you reach 5,000 men, 500,000 men, you're going to change, the world in your way. So you're doing a great service here. So thank you for that, by the way. Um, yes, I do think that, yeah, so it's a work in progress. We're moving along in the right direction, but there are still, the what I consider the old guard, the mom and dad, if they're from a cultural background, or their belief system is that, oh, we don't want to feel those feelings because we it's scary. Um, there's it can be an uphill battle for that generation. So the previous generation and the generation before that. But this generation, I call my clients that work with me, they're the heroes in their legacy, because they're the ones that are going to change the direction of the legacy. So it has to start with somebody has to pick up the sword. Here I am using masculine, terminology here but we have to pick up the reins here. We have to be the one that's going to change the direction. So um, that's really, really important. One person in the family legacy is enough to change the whole direction, because the whole family is a system. And when one part of that system changes, the entire system has to adapt. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be falling in love with therapy, but it means that, when John comes back into, after, a weekend with me, for example, he comes back into home, and, his children and his wife, and maybe the in-laws, if they live in the guest suite or something, they're like, "Hey, John, what's wrong? What's different with you? Something's different. Before you were responding like this, but now you're responding like, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's different." And then the way John changes the way he responds to his environment, then that starts to, because of those questions and the curiosity from the other members, now they're going to start to ask, well, what did you do? And then John becomes the advocate for the family. He's the one that starts the snowball. Okay, well, maybe the wife jumps in. Well, let's work on that relationship, because that's a pivotal one. And then maybe the kids jump in too, and then it's a snowball. And eventually, believe it or not, I've had some really stuck, quote unquote, stuck parents of my clients. So the grandparents of the kids, who are 75, 80 years old. And they're like, okay, let's just talk to the person. Like, it's can't hurt just to talk. And that's all you need. You just need a crack in the armor. Let's just get in there and let's just talk. And they'll find that, one of the cool things about the way that I work with EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is that we don't need to go into all of the painful details of a particular issue. We can go nice and quickly, actually, and we don't have to. I just have to know if you're feeling better, worse, or the same. Positive, negative, or neutral, and that can be enough just to drive the treatment. So there's a lot there, but it's definitely possible. And when these individuals, so if you're listening to the show and you go through a process like this, when you go through your transformation, you now take that particular elevated perspective or that transcendent perspective on the world and yourself into the world, then your legacy and what you do in the world, your career, et cetera, that also changes. And then people become drawn to you because you're helping them in a new way. So there's so much that can come from that decision to just check it out.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So they call you the celebrity savior, and that is for a very good reason. You want to tell us why?
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons. One, there's a funny story. As I was starting to become known for EMDR in Vancouver, um, I was starting to feel like I was a little bit of a EMDR hotshot. I was getting results for people instead of 2 years. It was 6 months, 3 months, and I was, yeah, it's pretty good. Like that. So I had a high profile media celebrity. I'll just call her Jane. So Jane comes in and she says, "Hey, Robert, I've got this addiction. I'm drinking, and but I can't go on the stage. I have to do a shot, and I got my pills with me and all." So she's taking medication. She's chasing it with a shot of whiskey, and she needs this to go on the stage. So that answered, first of all, yes, celebrities have performance anxiety. So that's important to note, because I was always curious. But she comes in and we start to do the first session like I did with everybody else, and she gets up like 3/4 of the way at the end to the end of the session, and she says, "Robert, you can't help me. You can't help me fast enough." She got up and she left. She walked out of my office, and here I am going.
Yeah.
It fell flat on my face, and I was
I
thinking,
did not see that coming.
wow, I didn't see it coming either. That's what I was saying. What? This only happens in the movies. No, it happens in real life too, apparently. So after I, licked my wounds a little bit, I recognized, like, okay, so these people, we need something that works faster. So, celebrities, depending on what they're doing, they might be coming in for a movie and they've got, a little bit of time, but not a lot of time, because movie stars, they 15, 20-hour days sometimes. So they need something that's quick. So a weekend, if they can take that off before they start shooting, boom, that's a way. It's going to be really helpful for them. So timing is a huge thing. And one of the things that drives me, because I used to be myself a lead singer of a rock band and a guitarist,
Oh, wow.
and so I know what it's like to be a creative professional. And I know that for me, music was my therapy before I started going to my own therapy. And this was, I was face to face with my feelings and knee deep in them and didn't know what the heck to do with them. And so it's so much pain that I was feeling. So I want to alleviate that for our stars. And particularly, in the last decade, from my count, the last 10 years, we've had about 150 well-known celebrities commit suicide.
I was just going to ask about that. Yes.
And it's just so heartbreaking. These are people that, when we're depressed, or when I was sad, when I was in a mood, I would watch a movie. Robin Williams made me laugh all the time, or I needed to listen to Amy Winehouse so that I could cry, because I needed to cry in the moment, or
Whitney
sound.
Houston.
Sorry.
Or Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston, yes, huge. Like, I grew
I
up,
cried my
with.
eyes out. I cried my eyes out for Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Amy Winehouse, Robin Williams, and I was like, woof. So
Exactly.
that takes me to a very, so I know that actors and singers and all the people who lead the entertaining or entertainment industry suffer from depression. And I came to learn about that when I dated an actor And then I was like, oh, so you get depressed as well. Wow. Because we, the audience, when we are watching a movie or a theater, or sorry, a theatrical play, we don't really like, we don't see them as a human beings. We see them as stars and celebrities, and they have everything. And then when we hear stories like Whitney's or Amy's or Robin Williams was the shock of my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how could a comedian commit suicide? So, did you now you've just said it's more than 150 celebrities. So, why?
Yeah.
Why, after getting all the fame, all the money, all the success, all the love from people around them, they yet feel lonely and empty and in pain to an extent that they take their lives away? So, why?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to echo something I just heard Kate Hudson talk about recently with Gwyneth Paltrow, that it's about the traumas that they never decided to fully embrace and work through. And, for some of the celebrities, and even the ones that I work with, some of the fame comes from the pain, right? Their success, Amy Winehouse's music,
Mm.
very sad, and Chester Bennington's music with Linkin Park. I was growing up, I didn't know, because I was younger. I wasn't really paying attention as much to the lyrics as I was the aggression and getting it out. So it was therapeutic for me to listen to that music. But looking back, at his lyrics are, it's like foreshadowing for what he did, and it's so sad. So um, these celebrities, one of the things is that they are afraid of working through the traumas. Some of them are afraid of what that might do to their career or something like that. If I'm no longer, working on, is my pain, and the shadow impulses are very creative. So there's a lot of creativity that can come from sadness and anger. And I just want to encourage people that there's a lot of creativity that comes from love and joy and peace. And just because you eliminate the traumas and the pain doesn't mean that you can't still access feelings and play that role, because you're going to know what it feels like to feel that. So that's one of the things. And there's another huge thing, a huge factor, is that celebrities that are born into families that were already celebrity.
Like Kate Hudson,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think she was also talking about, she didn't really.
Miley Cyrus, for example.
Exactly. Who am I to, to complain, because I have, everything's gifted to me. I've got all this money, I've got all this fame, I've got all this success. Number one, a lot of celebrities, if they come from that, and they're not, Miley Cyrus or Kate Hudson, who have their own careers and are obviously very successful in that regard, but if they're, say, a child of a celebrity and they don't want the fame, that's a huge problem. Like Elvis Presley's grandson, right? Where he, he was avoiding the fame. He didn't want it, at least from my interpretation, that is. So there's all of that is wrapped up into it. So there's this ownership, this fear of, am I really worth, the pain? That is, it really real? Am I really, is that really something that I'm dealing with? Who am I? Because there's so much poverty in the world and so many people that are struggling. They might even support these charities and think, well, I'm in a much more privileged scenario than them. So who am I to suffer? And just to be clear, this isn't just celebrities. When I talk about creative professionals, I'm also talking CEOs, entrepreneurs that I work with, professional athletes, and same thing. If you're running a multi-million-dollar company, and you have a nice car and you have a nice house, and you've got all this stuff, and yet you're still suffering, oftentimes that person might feel that there's something wrong with them, right? There's something wrong with me. Because I can tell you, the depression is not about the money. Doesn't matter how much. And yes, if you have no money, it is a big thing, and it's really difficult. I've been there, but it's not about the money, it's about the trauma.
Robert, what would have saved these people who have committed suicide, whether celebrities or not? Would it be the support of their families, or the culture or the society that we live in? Them going to therapy, more education, more awareness. What is it that could have saved any of those people who committed suicide?
Well, that's a good question, and probably a lot of people are wondering that too. Um, so I don't think that it's a society yet.
Okay.
You know, I think that we're still a long ways to go with society. It's still very toxic in many different ways. The amount of comparison that we have going on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully that'll change a little bit with COVID, you know, as people are more vulnerable and you're seeing their real lives. Sometimes, you know, celebrities have bad days as well and stuff. So that's good. Family can be supportive. I think that's you know, if you've got a supportive family, yes, lean on them from time to time. But at the same time, that's many times that's where the issue really starts. You know, that the family itself is toxic, right? It's if you can't feel safe to talk about your feelings with your family, you got to find a different place to talk about your feelings. And it's not just talking about your feelings, because you can have a good friend and you can talk about your day with your good friend,
Oh,
and that
thank
will
you.
help. It'll help. You know, it's nice to have good friends and you feel like, you know, you belong, but it doesn't go deep enough. So in my opinion, I'm going to suggest EMDR therapy, because this is what I know works in my experience 100% of the time. We're going to go in there and we're going to you know, completely clear the issue from the bedrock of where it all started from, and we got to do this quickly. So if those celebrities had known about me at the time, and this is why I feel like I failed them, because they didn't know about who I was, I think that there'd be a good chance that they'd be around here today.
Robert, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for being the person you are today. You're helping so many people, and you've helped me now personally, because there are a lot of things that happen inside my head as monologues or even dialogues, and you have answered more than one right now. So this is when I would be looking at you, and I was like, oh wow, we're connected. You have helped
Great.
me more than you could imagine. So thank you so much.
My
If
pleasure.
there's anything else you would like to add, please do.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the message that you are not your problem that you're facing. You know, the pain that you're experiencing is not a sign that there's something wrong with you, that, you know, that you're broken, or that, you know, the pain that you're experiencing has come from an original wound a long time ago, most likely from your parents, most likely it started even before them with their parents, etc. So your pain is caused from those experiences which were not properly processed in your brain, because that's what happens. We're in fight, flight, freeze, faint, shut down. So, but it is your responsibility to heal. Just because your issue started before you doesn't let you off the hook. You got to go and do your work. You have to heal this, and then you can change the world and you can change those around you. So I encourage you to look at therapy as not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, and you're actually doing the right thing. All right. We have to change the narrative, and it starts with you. You can do your part. So I encourage you to, you know, if you have any questions, reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer some as well.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. Until the next one, I'll see you very soon.